morning and welcome to this week's Fraserview online gathering. We're glad that you could join with us this morning. As the worship music plays, we invite you to sing along and to worship with us. And as the questions come up on the screen, we invite you to pause the video and either reflect with the people with you or just feel free to reflect on those questions by yourself.
I see the King of Glory. This week we have jumped forward in the Gospel of John to the last week of Jesus' life. During this last week, the revelation of who Jesus is becoming deeper and more profound. And this depth and profundity changes the way we understand who God is, and changes the way in which we understand the deep mysteries of our lives as creatures made by God to live in God's creation. We get to live just as Jesus lived. That's the claim that's going on here. We are invited to be like God, and of course that's an extreme honor. And so our response to the invitation expresses whether we really get who Jesus is. We get to be like Jesus. We get to be drawn deeper into the relationship, which is life itself. We get to enter into this center of reality of everything that's going on in the world. And so entry into this great mystery is what it means to respond faithfully to Jesus. So this week we get to watch Jesus demonstrate to us how to act out of love. We are reading from John 13 verses 1 to 17.
It was just before the Passover festival. Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. The evening was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God, and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus replied, "You do not realize now what I am doing, but later you will understand." "No," said Peter, "you shall never wash my feet." Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no part with me." "Then, Lord," Simon Peter replied, "not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well." Jesus answered, "Those who have had a bath need only to wash their feet. Their whole body is clean, and you are clean, though not every one of you." For he knew who was going to betray him, and that was why he said, "Not every one of you is clean." When he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. "Do you understand what I have done for you?" he asked to them. "You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. Very truly I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them."
What's the scene? Jesus and his disciples are reclining at the table. That means they're lying on their side with their head towards the table and their feet away from it. This is common in the ancient world. Then Jesus gets up and takes off his outer clothing. This probably means removes anything that was sort of the nicer stuff that he wore on the outside. He puts on something that looks like an apron. It attaches around the neck and around the waist, and it has enough loose length in it that you can dry someone's feet. The purpose, of course, is to keep your clothes clean while you perform a task. And looking like a servant, Jesus then pours himself a basin of water and proceeds from disciple to disciple, washing and drying their feet. There is an embarrassed, awkward, hushed silence at the table. Jesus, their master, is doing the work of a servant, work that was reserved for the lowliest of menial servants. Some Jews insisted that Jewish slaves should not be made wash people's feet. Only Gentile slaves should do that. As people of the same standing, they would not have washed each other's feet. And despite the high standing they hold Jesus in, the disciples probably wouldn't have washed his feet. So that they are not only shamefaced when Jesus offers to wash their feet, shamed by their lack of action which forced their master to do something they would not do, they were also shocked by their sense of cultural fitness disappearing. Jesus has reversed normal roles. The master is now the servant, just as death leads to life. Peter, of course, doesn't take this situation quietly. In his usual bumbling manner, Peter confuses the issue for us. If Jesus is to wash his feet, why not his hands and head as well? And the answer is because his head and his hands don't need washing, and because this clearly isn't the work of a servant. Jesus washes their feet to explain his death. Jesus dies because his mastery of the situation means that he is a servant. Jesus dies because the master's love means that he will serve the disciples in whatever way they need. And what they need is someone to die for them. That is their greatest need. So my question for us is, when has someone reversed roles and served you because of their love of Jesus? Most years I travel to Galliano for a pastoral retreat. The retreat is hosted by a professor who could retire at this point. The professor provides his cabin and we rent another so that 12 or 15 of us can come together and spend 3 days. We eat together, we rest together, we study together, and we listen to each other's stories. It is one of the most enriching things that I do each year. We chip in a little money for rent and food and a little for the speaker, but the professor, Don, gives his time for free. He spends his retreat cooking, cleaning, and making sure everything runs smoothly. And while he is doing all these things, he listens carefully. His presence as a servant creates this rich place to encounter Jesus. When he could be enjoying time off, he serves me.
I remember shortly after arriving here at Fraserview, I blew up a disc in my back. I ended up in the hospital for 10 days and on crutches for several weeks. The worst part of the whole thing was that it was the beginning of gardening season, and I always joke that gardening is cheaper than a psychiatrist because it's something that gives me great joy and peace and really helps me work through life, I guess. The vulnerability of being cared for by others is really humbling. As a teacher, a mother, and a daughter caring for her sick father, I have always found myself in the position of being a caregiver. And here I was now in a position of having others care for me that I barely knew. I had only known them for a couple of months. The people here at Fraserview prayed for me. They provided meals for my family. They came to visit me in the hospital. And most significantly, somebody came and helped me with my garden, which was such a blessing for me. Those ways of caring for me were really very practical and very much needed, and I was very thankful that Jerry was able to set all of that up, put me in that position of being served and cared for. But apart from the practical part of having meals provided for my family was this amazing testament of a Jesus-centered life, that these people would step into my story and care for me. I would have to say that was probably the first time I can recall seeing the face of Jesus in other people. If I had to name an event in my life here during my journey at Fraserview that really helped me feel connected, cared for, and loved, and be included and part of this community, it would be the time when I blew up my disc and you, the people of Fraserview, stepped in and cared for me. I now have the privilege of seeing other people who are going through challenges in their life and providing meals, and it is humbling. I can think of many people who said it's really difficult to receive that kind of care because we're so not used to it in this life. So I thank you, people of Fraserview, for allowing me to be cared for and to be humbled in seeing the service that you provide to me, which I normally provide to other people.
This question really reminds me of teachers that I had in elementary and high school. I didn't always have the best experience with my teachers, and you may not know it about me, but I was very fidgety and a very loud and disruptive kid at times when I was in school. And it's worth noting that I went to a Christian school, so most of my teachers were Jesus followers, and they taught us actively about Jesus. But I had many teachers that really took time to accommodate for me, to really work with a kid who was kind of disruptive in class and actually work on finding creative ways to keep me focused and paying attention. Looking back on it, I can see the teachers were really going out of their way to serve me, and it really echoes the story of the shepherd leaving the 99 to seek out the one who was lost. And teachers were often taking time aside from the well-behaving kids and really helping me as I was fully distracted. And that really showed to me that they were expressing their love of Jesus by doing that. In a place where I was often at fault for causing conflict and lack of focus, adults that showed tremendous patience in caring for me were really serving me well because of their love of Jesus.
On either side of the description of Jesus' action, there is exclamation for us to explore. Verse 12 shows Jesus' eagerness for the disciples to understand what he has demonstrated for them. They, of course, won't really get it until after Jesus' death, resurrection, and the arrival of the Spirit. And verses 13 to 17 tell us that if Jesus acted like this, who they call Lord and Teacher, that he expects his followers to act like this too. He sees this as part of entering into the blessing of his kingdom. Verses 1 to 3 tell us the reason that Jesus acted in this manner. Jesus acts like this because this is a type of action which expresses what it means to be God, and therefore what it means to be a fully human image bearer of God. Paul says it like this: Jesus, who being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness, and being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. The point is that Jesus knows that he is God, and instead of using his position as God to his advantage, he expresses his godness most fully by becoming a servant for the benefit of others. Jesus' identity is best expressed through his service, despite the cost to himself. And so Jesus' followers are to understand their lives, their identity, in the same way. They have been included in the life of God, which is love, and they are in the love, so they now can act just as God does, by denying themselves in order to love others. And this, of course, is the reversal of the usual human practice. Usually humans try to exploit their position for their own benefit. They look to use their lives so they can climb the ladder of success faster than everyone else. But the life of God completely reverses that process, because we know that because we have safety and security of God's life in us, then we can deny ourselves in expression of that life. That is, of course, the sentiment expressed in verse 3. Jesus knew that he had the Father's power, and that he came from God, and that he was returning to God, so he had no fear of giving up his life as a servant. If we were to read those sentences somewhere else, if they were written about a superhero we watched or read about, then we would expect a flashy display of power in which Satan would be defeated. With power comes flashy displays of our prowess. The Jesus way, though, is different. The Jesus way reverses our expectations. Instead, loving service, which requires self-denial, expresses our closeness to the center of all things, Jesus. Loving service expresses that we get what Jesus is doing and desire to join with it. We understand that dying brings life when it is done because of Jesus. So my question for us is, what area of your life do you need to serve in rather than assert power? When I think about this, I think about how we live well with others, and that's always a difficult process. And so family life creates a great opportunity for us to service. Sharing a home requires that everyone commit to doing the little things which smooth life together. In one sense, dividing up the household tasks is easy. It can take some negotiation, but everyone knows that the garbage needs to go out on Tuesday, that the garden needs to be maintained, that the house needs to be cleaned, and on and on. It's the smaller tasks that often require that we fill in for each other when people are busy or in areas where they aren't quite on top of things. So getting the dishes actually into the dishwasher, making sure that the thing at the bottom of the stairs gets taken up to its home upstairs, and wiping down the surfaces of the counter as they've slowly got dirty over time, no one's particular fault. And so these require that we build habits of service as opposed to shouting about who's responsible and what the rules should be. And these habits of service allow us then to live well together. And of course this applies not only in our home life, but in our life as we live with other people in our jobs and at church, and as we serve people throughout the world with Jesus' love.
I think it's pretty amazing timing that this question comes up, the way it's phrased. What area of your life do you need to serve in rather than assert power? Andrew, Nick, and I are working on a book study, The Pastor in a Secular Age, which is not a very exciting title, but the subtitle is Ministry to People Who No Longer Need God. And this has been an opportunity for me to really think about my role as a pastor. I've said before in a number of other answers over this past year that I am a fixer. I like to fix, I like to come up with solutions, I like to see resolution, I like to see problems solved, and I like to contribute to that. That's not my role as a pastor. My responsibility has shifted to seeing God as the one who is in control. God is responsible for the resolution and the redemption of difficult and challenging situations in our lives. So what exactly is my role? I see my role, or I'm coming to see my role, as one where I am sitting and being present with people in the challenges and the joy that they experience in life. There's a great story in this book that we're studying by Nadia Boltz-Weber. She talks about this experience of being called to the ER to be with somebody who's critically injured, and doctors and nurses are hustling around trying to fix the problem, and she's standing there and leans over to the nurse and says, "What am I supposed to be doing here?" And that sort of leads me to think that's the fix-it mentality. That's the, what is it that I can do to fix this situation? And the nurse, I thought that this was such a wise thing for her to say. This is how she responded to Nadia in that moment. She looked at my badge, which would have said that she was a pastor, and she said, "Your job is to be aware of God's presence in the room while we do our jobs." And for me, that shift in an understanding, that is how I need to learn to serve people and continue to care for them as a pastor. That I need to be aware of God's presence in the room when I'm meeting and listening to their story and being present in their circumstances.
I think this is a good general rule of thumb for interpersonal relationships in general, whether it be with friends or with my wife or with the people that I work alongside. Serving rather than asserting power is important and difficult work. I think specifically of the people in my life that I don't agree with fully on large scale issues, specifically of how to live out your faith and how to act and how to believe as a Christian. It's easy for me to assert power in my own head, and even if I don't outwardly disagree, I can try to hold on to power in my heart and assume that I know better and I understand better than other people. I think these are the areas that I need to serve in by listening to stories, by hearing other perspectives, and being quick to listen and slow to speak. That is a better way of serving them rather than outright disagreeing, or even worse, building up resentment in my heart and not even approaching someone about it. So that is definitely a way that I'm working on serving others, by listening and caring for people before I rush to assuming that I disagree or assuming that I know better than others.
So here we are again with another All of Life interview, and we are blessed to see our one and only lovely Cindy Olson join us today. So we know God works. Work is good. It's something that He calls us to, and we're going to hear how Cindy's life has changed since being a pastor here, and now she's in this retired world. What does work look like for her? So welcome to Cindy. First of all, tell us, what's life like right now?
Well, it's good. It is good. I'm in COVID like everybody. I'm a retired COVID person. Mm-hmm. So I love our walks and being at home a lot and grocery shopping. That's very exciting for me right now.
That's so sad, isn't
Yeah,
it?
I know.
We really
But I
need
have to say, I love the first question, what is our occupation? Because I have always says that you cannot retire from being a Christian. So it's not like we can, volunteer and be really great when our kids are young and they're growing up, and then retire and believe that we can retire from the church as well as from being a Christian. So my occupation right now is retired pastor, but working Christian, really.
That's great.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I've heard you say that before, so bringing it into your real context of actually being
Yeah.
retired, and you can't retire from being a Christian.
Yeah.
That's perfect. So as an image bearer of God, how do you think your work reflects some aspect of God's work?
I try to love my neighbor as myself, and I try to reflect that I love God in the world. And so I try really hard, just to be loving towards a neighbor. It's really interesting because it doesn't always come naturally for me. And so I have to be reminded I have to work hard. And it's just the way I treat other people, I think is just really, really important. So I'm always trying to be considerate of that. I always try to have a voice that might be a little counterculture or maybe something that people don't hear regularly. Almost like, oh, this is something to think about. But in my day-to-day life, no matter who I treat, I just try to treat them well and be caring and kind. I try. I really do try to do that.
And I always see you, and you're always, you've got a smile and are always caring. And I see service. I see you serving. Still, you're not part of the church, but I send out emails about meals. Can you help out with that? And you wanted to do the MCC stuff, and so is that part of?
I think it's the root of what we do. I think I always thought that the greater you are, the greater you serve, and that's what you need. That's what you need to do. That's how, for me, even when I was pastoring, serving, I didn't need to be served. I needed to serve. I think, and to serve more. And I still feel that way. I do believe it's really important. I think it's a very practical way of showing God's love to this world. Yeah. So it is just really important.
To serve.
Yeah.
So Cindy, how do you think your work gives you a unique vantage point to the brokenness of this world?
Well, I think my work as a retired person really speaks of my age, and it speaks to a wisdom that only age can give you. I hate to say I'm not, putting down young people and that they don't know and they don't have wisdom, but experience, just life experience and seeing things and sometimes comparing it like with the past and the present and trying to work that pendulum out. But I think as an older person who's retired, I don't know, I have an vantage point of looking at the world and looking at the secular world, and we live in such a secular time, and kind of seeing the errors of the ways, sometimes the errors of I hate to sound churchy, but the lies that are being told that young people especially, are buying into in the secular world, and just having a sense that things could be so much better. And I even sit and I think, how can I, maybe I need to write a blog or something, but how can I get a different voice out into that world that says, says, well, that is true, but maybe here's another way to think about it. Maybe here's another path to take, because I just see a lot of untruths that are being sold, and people are buying it, and I don't think it's helpful at all.
And I love your reaction is that it's a loving response first.
Oh yeah,
a loving response, and then you have a voice to say, well, here's my perspective. I mean, I agree with you. Media.
Yeah.
And social media especially is full of these influencers and
You can
people
be
who
an
are writing
influencer.
parenting. I remember Barbara Coloroso
Yes.
wrote a book
Yeah.
on parenting
Yeah.
where she claimed to be the best parenting expert ever. She didn't have children.
Yes.
And then when she became a parent, she realized, oh, I actually needed to live in that world
Yes.
before I have the right or the ability to speak into it. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of what you're saying, that you've lived in the world, you've seen a lot of stuff, and you've got this opportunity to speak into it.
Yes.
How are you going to get that platform?
I don't know. Well, maybe I need to become an influencer. Maybe I should get my own little YouTube channel that would no one would ever watch. But here's an example. One time, someone said to me, I read this mom. She writes a blog, and she says, I have to be selfish. I like being selfish. Sometimes I need to look after myself. And I looked at her and I go, that's the exact opposite of what Jesus teaches. Jesus teaches that we have to be selfless. We have to be caring. And I look in this world, and this world of selfishness, it's not helping. It really isn't helping. And so just little contrary voices, it'd be kind of interesting.
Do you find yourself, I know that you do use Facebook.
Yeah.
And I think Twitter.
And,
you're way
well,
ahead
I
of me.
read Twitter. I don't tweet very much.
Yeah. But do you find that that's a platform for you?
I use it as a platform,
You
a
do?
gentle platform. I
Yeah.
try to use it as a gentle platform.
Mm-hmm.
I think people who follow that are my Facebook friends or in Instagram would know my position.
Mm-hmm.
I think know kind of where I stand.
And the way you state it
Yeah.
is loving.
Hopefully, hopefully it's not too offensive or over the top.
Mm-hmm.
Or hopefully I don't come across as thinking that I'm perfect, because I know I'm not, and I don't ever even think that ever. As a matter of fact, I spend most of my day repenting and being sorry for things that I've thought or said. So I know I'm not perfect. So I hope I don't give the impression that I think I am,
That you think you are.
or that being a Christ follower it makes you perfect.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
stated a couple times about loving your neighbor, and that's what Jesus commands us to do. Love our neighbors as ourselves.
Yeah.
How do you think your work actually functions to love your neighbor?
To love your neighbor. Well, I still have quite a few people in my life, even through COVID, and I just try to love them and care for them and support them and encourage them, and I try to have people know that I'm aware that they exist, and that their existence matters, and that they count, and that they matter, and that I'm interested in them. And I sincerely am, because my favorite thing is people and relationships, right?
Which is why COVID is hard.
Yes.
But you're able to connect with your dad now on Zoom.
On Zoom,
and,
yes, do that, which is kind of nice.
Yeah.
And
there's a lot of loving we can do for our neighbors even through COVID.
yes, and even through text messages
Yeah.
and phone calls and everything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Won't it be nice to hug? I
Yeah.
can't wait to hug
I
you.
know, right?
I know.
It won't be long.
It won't be
It won't be long now.
I know. So Cindy, thank you so much for telling us about your retired life and the things that you're doing, spending time with grandkids. I know you're kind of part of the running group.
I was until my surgery.
Yeah.
And
So now you're the walking group.
now I'm the walking group.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
still an opportunity to
Yeah.
engage with other people and share the love that Jesus
Yeah.
calls us to.
Yeah, no,
Every
I love
day.
it. I do
Yeah.
love it. And actually, one of the ladies I run with is Hindu, and we have conversations often about God.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
neat.
that she usually initiates, so it's kind of cool.
Wow.
Yeah,
Beautiful. So
Yeah.
just being the light in
hopefully.
this world.
Hopefully.
You are the light in my
Yes.
life. So.
Oh, thank you. I feel the same. But that we can
Yeah.
only hope that
Yeah.
we are that light.
No, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we don't retire from being Christian.
No.
Good words.
No. Okay.
Good words.
Thank
I want to
you.
pray for you
Okay.
and for other people who are retired and who are in that stage of life. So, Jesus, thank you so much for bringing Cindy here. It is always a breath of fresh air when she comes through the door with her positivity and her ability to just really care for and love others that she sees. Lord, retirement is an opportunity to look back on our lives and see the journey that we've been on. And I thank you so much for Cindy being able to use her wisdom and confidently share her love of you with other people. God, we pray for all of the people in our congregation and beyond, all of the people around us who are retired or who are approaching that phase in their life, that they too can see that they can be these amazing influencers in the lives of young people, old, and everybody in between. So God, we just thank you again for blessing us with this opportunity to share in the journey of Cindy's life after Fraserview, and we bless her as she goes forward and continues to influence others, continues to build relationships, and continues to show others how we can love, serve, and care for our neighbors. And so God, we thank you again, and thank you for being here with us. We love you so much, Jesus. We pray all of this in your blessed name. Amen.
What gift of grace is Jesus my Redeemer? There is no more for heaven now to give. He is my joy, my righteousness and freedom, my steadfast love, my deep and boundless peace. To this I hold, my hope is only Jesus, for my life is wholly bound to His. Oh, how strange and divine, I can sing, all is mine, yet not I, but through Christ in me. The night is dark, but I am not forsaken, for by my side the Savior, He will stay. I labor on in weakness and rejoicing, for in my need His power is displayed. To this I hold, my shepherd will defend me. Through the deepest valley He will lead. Oh, the night has been won, and I shall overcome, yet not I, but through Christ in me. No fate I dread, I know I am forgiven. The future sure, the price it has been paid. For Jesus bled and suffered for my pardon, and He was raised to overthrow the grave. To this I hold, my sin has been defeated. Jesus now and ever is my plea. Oh, the chains are released, I can sing, I am free, and not I, but through Christ in me. With every breath, I long to follow Jesus, for He has said that He will bring me home. And day by day, I know He will renew me, until I stand with joy before the throne. To this I Christ. To this I hope. To this I hope. My hope is only Jesus. All the glory evermore to Him. When the race is complete, still my lips shall repeat, yet not I, but through Christ in me. When the race is complete, still my lips shall repeat, yet not I, but through Christ in me. Yet not I, but through Christ in me. Yet not I, but through Christ in me.
Thank you for joining with us this morning. A few things to remind you of. First is gardening. We're starting back up with that. So on Wednesday from 5:30 till 7:30 p.m., feel free to join us here as we take care of the Fraserview grounds. The second is church at home on Monday evenings. We're continuing with that, and that will be happening this week, so we invite you to join us for that. And finally, if you would like to suggest a name for the discernment committee, contact Andrew at some point soon. We would love to hear those suggestions as well. As you go this week, we invite you to look for ways that you can serve other people in your life as an expression of your love for Jesus. Go in peace.